before the maps, before the borders. Before the first word was ever written down in this part of the world, there was the sky, and there was the land, and between them, there was a promise. The old people say that in the beginning, the sky and the earth were not separate things. They were one. And the great god, Enkai, lived among the people, close enough to touch. In those days, Enkai owned every living thing: the grass, the rivers, and most precious of all, the cattle. Soft-eyed, slow-moving, sacred. The cattle belonged to God alone. Then one day, the earth and the sky tore apart. No one remembers why. But when the great separation came, Enkai rose upward, lifting into the heavens, and the people were left behind on the bare ground below. They had no herds now, no milk, no wealth, only hunger, and the wide, empty plain. And so the people lifted their faces to the clouds, and they begged the god not to forget them. And Enkai listened. From the sky, the god sent the cattle down to the earth. Some say they slid down the long roots of a sacred fig tree. Others say they came down a great rope of bark, lowered gently to the grass. And the god spoke. "These cattle are yours now," he told them. "Guard them. Honor them. They are the cord that ties you to me." And the people who received them became the keepers of that promise. We call them the Maasai. And this is not a story about a people who vanished. This is a story about a people who refused to. A story still being told, today, under the same wide African sky. For more than 1,000 years, they have walked these plains beside their cattle. They have stared down lions with nothing but a spear and a steady heart. They have buried kings without graves and crowned warriors without thrones. The modern world has tried again and again to bend them, to fence them in, to tell them their old ways belong in a museum. And still, they remain. Tall, unbowed, draped in red. But to understand the promise, you have to understand the land that tested it. A land of fire and grass, drought and flood. A place the world now calls the cradle of humankind, the Great Rift Valley. So I am Myra, and today we uncover entire history of Maasai tribe. Let's dive in. Today, the Maasai live across a vast stretch of southern Kenya and northern Tanzania. Roughly 1 million people, give or take, scattered across the savanna in close-knit family homesteads. They are herders. They are wanderers. They are, above all, survivors. They speak a language called Ma, soft and rhythmic, full of words for cattle and rain and grass. To outsiders, they are perhaps the most recognized people in all of Africa. The tall figures in red, standing alone against an endless horizon. They did not farm the land in the old way. They did not dig for gold or build with stone. Their whole world rested on the backs of their cattle. To a Maasai, a cow is not simply livestock. A cow is wealth and food and family and a gift from God, all at once. This is why they could pick up their lives and move whenever the grass ran out. Their riches walked beside them. A people with everything they owned on 4 legs can go almost anywhere. And for centuries they did. But they did not begin here, on these southern plains. To find their true origin, you have to travel north, far north, following an invisible thread back through the centuries, all the way to the valley of a great river. The Maasai belong to a wider family of peoples known as the Nilotes. The name comes from the Nile, the longest river on earth. And it was somewhere near the upper reaches of that river, in the land we now call South Sudan, that their story began. Picture it, a hot, flat country of cattle camps and slow brown water. Tall, lean herding people moving with their animals from pasture to pasture, reading the sky for rain. This was the world of the Maasai ancestors. They measured a man's worth in cattle and counted his children almost as carefully. They drank the milk of their cows, and on special days, a little of the blood as well, drawn gently from the living animal and mixed warm into the milk. And then, sometime around 500 years ago, they began to move. South. Always south. No one wrote down the reason. Perhaps the grass failed. Perhaps the people grew too many. Perhaps they simply followed the cattle, and the cattle followed the rain. It was not a single journey. It was a slow drift across generations, a migration measured not in days, but in lifetimes. Grandparents died on the trail. Children were born under new stars, and still, the people pressed on, herds before them. Think of what that journey asked of them. Crossing rivers swollen with flood, burying the old where they fell, driving the herds through country thick with lions and disease. The Maasai were not handed these plains. They walked 1,000 miles to earn them. They passed the shores of a great desert lake, the place we now call Lake Turkana. They crossed highlands and dry plains. And finally, they descended into a land unlike any other on Earth. A long, deep scar running down the face of the continent. The Great Rift Valley. Forged over millions of years as the Earth itself pulled apart, it is a country of volcanoes and grassland, of soda lakes and bottomless craters. Here, our oldest ancestors first stood upright. And here, the Maasai found their home. Imagine standing there for the first time. The air thin and bright at altitude. Herds of wildebeest and zebra darkening the plains to the horizon. Snow on the equator, crowning the great mountains. To a cattle people, it must have looked like a promise kept. They arrived to find these plains already lived in by other peoples. But the Maasai came with something formidable. A warrior culture built around the long spear, and a hunger for grazing land that would not be denied. The Maasai did not conquer with numbers alone. They conquered with discipline. Young men were raised from boyhood to become warriors, trained to feel no fear, to move as one body, and to die before they would let the herd be taken. By the middle of the 1800s, their power had reached its peak. Maasai territory stretched for hundreds of miles, from the dry mountains of the north down toward the heart of Tanzania. They were, by reputation, the lords of East Africa. Their warriors were famous and feared. Travelers wrote of tall men with braided red hair and unblinking eyes, who could run all day beside their cattle and would charge a lion without hesitation. Caravans paid to pass through their land. Few dared to fight them. They believed something powerful about themselves, that Enkai had given all the cattle of the world to the Maasai, and to the Maasai alone. Every herd on earth, by right, belonged to them. It was not arrogance. To them, it was simply the truth. That belief shaped everything. When a Maasai war party rode out to take cattle from a neighboring tribe, they did not see themselves as raiders. In their eyes, they were only bringing God's cattle home, back to the hands that were meant to hold them. But no people, however strong, can outrun the sky forever. And in the final years of the 1800s, the sky turned its red face toward the Maasai. They call that time the Emutai, the wiping out. First came a cattle plague, sweeping in from the north, that killed the herds where they stood. By some accounts, 9 out of every 10 cattle died. The wealth of a nation rotted in the grass. Then came smallpox, striking the people themselves. And on the heels of disease came drought, the rains failing season after season. An explorer who crossed this land in those years described women starved to skeletons, and a silence where the cowbells used to ring. Half the Maasai may have died, and as they reeled, foreign powers drew lines across their maps and took the best of their grazing lands for farms and game reserves. It should have been the end. It was not. Because the Maasai did what the Maasai have always done. They endured. They rebuilt their herds, calf by calf. They held on to their language, their god, and their cattle. And they kept wearing red. Which brings us to the color itself. If you see the Maasai only once, in a photograph, in a film, in a passing glimpse from a safari road, one thing will stay with you. The red. A deep, burning red, wrapped around the body, glowing against the green and gold of the plains. That cloth is called the shuka, and today it is the unmistakable flag of the Maasai nation. But the love of red runs far deeper than any single piece of cloth. To understand it, you have to go back once more to God. Remember that the Maasai believe in one God, Enkai. But Enkai has two faces, two moods, two ways of turning toward the world below. When God is kind, they call him Enkai Narok, the black god. He lives in the dark storm clouds, heavy with rain. He brings green grass, full udders, and fat, healthy herds. Black, to the Maasai, is the color of mercy. But when God is angry, he becomes Enkai Nanyoki, the red god. He shows himself in the cracked earth of the dry season, in the lightning, in the burning red sky at the end of a rainless day. Red is the color of God's wrath. You can see, then, how the Maasai read the sky the way we read a face. Black clouds mean God is pleased, and the people are safe. A red burning horizon means God is troubled, and hard days are coming. The weather is not just weather, it is a message. So red is a serious color, a holy color. It is the heat of the sun that can kill the herds. It is the lightning that splits the sky. To wear red is to wear a piece of God's own power. But there is another red, closer to home, the red of blood. And to the Maasai, blood is not a thing of horror. Blood is life itself, the warm river running through every cow and every person they love. When a child is born, when a marriage is blessed, when a warrior comes of age, blood is shed and shared and honored. It seals the bond between the people and their God. So the color red was woven into their lives long before it was woven into cloth. Long before they ever owned a single thread of red cloth, the Maasai painted themselves red. They mixed a soft red stone, called ochre, with the fat of their cattle and rubbed it into their skin and into their hair. A young warrior would spend hours coloring his long braids with this red earth until they shone like copper in the sun. It marked him as strong, as beautiful, as ready. Red was the color of a man at the height of his power. Even now, in the great ceremonies, you will see this older red return. Faces and bodies painted with ochre and chalk, in patterns passed down for generations. The cloth may be new. The earth on the skin is as old as the people themselves. And red carried one more meaning, out on the open plain, where the lions hunt. The Maasai noticed something. A figure in red, standing tall and unafraid, made the predators uneasy. The big cats kept their distance. A herder learns this young. Out alone with the cattle, far from home, the red shuka is more than clothing. It is a signal, seen across great distances, that says, "A Maasai is here. This land is watched. Approach with care." To this day, herders will tell you that a lion thinks twice before charging a wall of red. Whether it is the color itself or the bold, upright human wearing it, no one can say for certain. But the warriors believe it. And belief, on the Savanna, is a kind of armor. So when a Maasai wraps himself in red, he is not simply getting dressed. He is wrapping himself in the blood of his cattle, in the power of an angry god, in the courage it takes to stand between a lion and the herd. There is a saying among them, "A Maasai is born in red, lives in red, and is honored in red." It is the first color a newborn sees, and the color that surrounds an elder at the end. From the beginning of life to the very end, it is always there. The red cloth you see today, the bright checked shuka, came later, traded in from the wider world only in the last century or so. But the meaning was already ancient. The Maasai did not borrow the color. They simply found a new way to wear what they had always believed. Red is the color the world sees first. It is the skin of the Maasai story. But a skin is only the surface. The warriors who wear this red did not raise themselves. They were shaped, fed, and forged by someone else entirely. While the men guard the cattle out on the plains, the true foundation of the tribe is being built, by hand, behind the thorn walls of the homestead. And the architects of that world are the women. Step through the gap in the thorn fence, and you step into the true heart of the Maasai world. Out on the plains, the men and the cattle come and go. But here, inside these walls, life is made and held and carried on. This is the Boma, the Enkai in their own tongue. From a distance, it looks almost like a part of the land itself. A wide circle of low, rounded houses, the color of the earth, ringed by a tangled wall of thorn branches. There is no gate of iron. There is no lock. The thorns are the lock. That thorn wall is no small thing. The branches come from the acacia, armed with spikes long enough to tear skin. Woven together, they form a barrier that even a determined lion will not cross lightly. By day, it keeps the goats in. By night, it keeps the killers out. And at the very center of the circle, in the safest place of all, is the cattle pen. When the sun goes down and the herds come home, the cattle are gathered here, surrounded by the houses, surrounded by the thorns, surrounded by the people who would die for them, because everything here is built around one simple truth. The cattle must be protected. The whole shape of the homestead, the circle, the wall, the houses facing inward, is a fortress designed by people who have lived beside lions for 1,000 years. But who builds this fortress? Not the warriors, not the elders. In Maasai life, the work of building a home belongs entirely to the women. They are the masons. They are the engineers. They raise these walls with their own 2 hands. The house has a name in the Ma language, Inkajijik, and it begins with a frame. A woman cuts and gathers branches, slender and strong, and drives them into the ground in a tight oval. She bends and ties the tops together, weaving them into a low dome, just tall enough to stand and move inside. For your info only, women are building these kind of houses in Asia to this day, and it seems they are still in medieval times. Then comes the plaster. And here is where the genius lies. She mixes mud and grass and ash, and the one thing the Maasai always have in great supply: cow dung, fresh from the herd, mixed by hand into a thick, dark paste. It may sound humble. It is anything but. As that mixture dries in the sun, it hardens like clay. It seals every gap against the wind. It turns away the rain. And when the dry season comes, it holds the cool inside, like the walls of a cave. She smooths it on layer by layer, day after day, until the whole house is sealed tight. A small low doorway is left, with a curved passage just inside, bending sharply so that no wind, no rain, and no wandering animal can find a straight path to the people sleeping within. There are no large windows, perhaps one tiny hole, no bigger than a fist, to let a thread of light and smoke escape. From the outside, the house looks closed, almost blind. But that darkness is a gift. It keeps out the brutal heat of the midday sun. And when the rains finally come, the whole homestead breathes a sigh. That first heavy smell of water on dry earth rises from the ground, rich and sweet. The dung-sealed roofs hold firm against the downpour, and inside, the family stays dry, listening to the rain drum on the home a woman built. Step inside, and your eyes must learn the dark. Slowly, the room takes shape. The air is thick and warm, scented with wood smoke and milk and earth. A small fire glows in the center, never fully out, the beating heart of the home. Around the fire, the space is divided with care. Here, a raised platform of sticks and hide, where the family sleeps. There, a smaller pen, just inside the wall, where the youngest calves and the sick animals are kept warm and safe through the cold nights. The fire does everything. It cooks the food. It warms the bones. Its smoke drifts up through the roof and keeps the insects away. And it gives light to a room that has almost no other. To sit by that fire is to sit at the very center of Maasai life. A single house like this can take a woman months to build, working between all her other duties. And she will do it more than once in her life. because the Maasai do not stay in one place forever. When the grass around the boma is grazed down to dust, when the cattle have taken all the land can give, the people move. The old homestead is left behind to crumble slowly back into the earth, and somewhere new, on fresh grass, the women begin again. Think of that for a moment. A woman may build the walls that shelter her children not once, but several times over a lifetime. Each home rising from the soil by her hands, each one given back to the soil when its season ends. It is a quiet, endless act of creation. And the house she builds is hers. In a world where the men own the cattle and the land is shared by all, the home itself belongs to the woman who made it. Her husband may have many wives, but each wife has her own house, her own fire, her own small kingdom. For a Maasai household is often large. A man of standing may marry more than one wife, and each builds her own home within the same circle. The children move freely between them. The co-wives share the labor, the milking, the water, the long days. It is not always easy, but there is strength in it. When one woman is sick, another tends her children. When one is grieving, the others carry her. The circle of houses is also a circle of hands, holding one another up through drought and loss and joy. Now follow the rhythm of a single day inside these walls. It begins before the sun, in the cold blue dark, with the lowing of cattle and the soft clink of bells, eager to be let out to graze. The women rise first. The first task of the day is the milking. By the light of the early sky, they move among the cows with smooth wooden gourds, drawing the warm milk that will feed the children and flavor the long day ahead. Then the gate of thorns is opened, and the herds pour out onto the plain, driven by the young men and the herding boys. The dust rises gold in the new light. The bells fade into the distance, and the boma settles into the work of the women. There is water to fetch, sometimes hours away, carried home on the back in heavy gourds and cans. There is firewood to gather. There is food to prepare, and walls to mend, and always, always, children underfoot, learning the world by watching their mothers. And the children are everywhere. The very young stay close to the fire and the breast. The older ones are given small jobs, minding goats, watching babies, fetching and carrying, slowly absorbing every skill they will one day need to survive. A Maasai childhood is short on toys and long on lessons. A girl watches her mother build and bead and milk and learns by doing. A boy watches the herders return at dusk and dreams of the day he will carry a spear of his own. As the sun climbs, the heat presses down. The plain shimmers, and the dark, cool houses become a refuge. This is the genius of that earthen architecture revealed. While the world outside bakes, inside the walls it is shaded and still. Then, as the light softens and lengthens into evening, a sound returns on the wind. The bells. The herds are coming home, and the whole homestead turns to greet them, counting each animal back through the gate into the safe heart of the circle. Evening milking. Cooking fires lit. The smell of smoke and food drifting up into a sky going pink, then purple, then deep and starry. The thorns are closed, the cattle are in. The day's danger is shut outside, and the family draws close around the flames. And in that firelight, the oldest classroom in the world opens. The elders speak. Stories are told of God and cattle and brave warriors and the long migration south. Knowledge passes from the old mouths to the young ears, the way it always has. No books, no screens, only voices in the dark and the crackle of the fire and the great African night pressing in around a circle of earthen homes. This is how the Maasai have carried themselves through 1,000 years, not in writing, but in memory. But the women of the boma do more than build the walls and feed the fire. They carry another kind of knowledge in their hands, a language with no sound, written entirely in color. To read it, look closely at what they wear. At first glance, the beadwork of the Maasai looks like pure decoration, bright rings of color stacked around the neck, bracelets climbing the arms, earrings swinging from stretched and beautiful lobes. It is dazzling, but it is not just for beauty. Every color is a word. Every pattern is a sentence. Worn together, on the body of a woman or a warrior, they tell a story that any Maasai can read at a glance. Who you are, how old you are, whether you are married, what you have endured. And the keepers of this silent language are, once again, the women. Beadwork is women's art, women's labor, women's knowledge. It is taught from girlhood, passed from mother to daughter, a skill every Maasai woman is expected to master. Long before the bright glass beads arrived, the Maasai adorned themselves with what the land provided: seeds and dried grass, and small white shells carried up from the distant coast, pieces of bone and clay and wood, shaped and strung with patient hands. Then, a little over 100 years ago, traders brought something new across the land: tiny glass beads, made far away, in colors brighter and more lasting than anything the Savanna had ever offered. The Maasai took them and made them entirely their own. Today, beadwork is woven into the rhythm of daily life. In the cool of the afternoon, the women of the boma gather together. They sit in the shade, threads and needles and bowls of loose beads between them, and they work, and they talk, and they laugh. It is part craft, part conversation, part classroom. A young girl sits among the older women, watching their fingers fly, learning which colors belong together and why. With every bead she threads, she is learning to speak her culture's deepest language. Watch their hands and you will marvel. No measuring tools, no printed patterns, only memory and instinct, guiding the needle through bead after bead in flawless rows. A skill that looks effortless and took a lifetime to learn. So let us learn to read it too. Let us learn the meaning of the colors. And the first color, the one that rules them all, you already know. Red. Red, in the beadwork as on the body, stands for bravery, for unity, for the blood of the cattle that binds the whole people together. When a cow is slaughtered to mark a great occasion, its blood brings the community as one. So red is the color of belonging. Beside the red, look for white. White is the color of cow's milk, the pure and gentle food that nourishes every child. And so white means peace. It means purity. It means health. It is the calm at the center of all that fierce color. Then there is blue. Blue is the color of the sky, the home of Enkai, and the color of the rain that falls from it. It speaks of water and energy, and the life-giving heavens above. In a dry land, blue is the color of hope itself. Green is the color of the grass after the rains, the color of the land made generous, when the plains turn lush and the cattle grow fat. Green stands for health, for nourishment, for the earth that feeds the people and their herds. And then the warm glow of orange and yellow. These are the colors of hospitality and warmth, the color of the gourd offered to a guest, the yellow of the sun and of fertility, of new life waiting to come. To wear them is to say, you are welcome here. And these colors are not saved only for festivals. A Maasai woman wears her beadwork as she works, as she milks the cows, as she walks for miles to fetch water. The beauty is woven into the everyday. Grace is simply part of the labor. Even black has its place, the color of the people themselves, and of the hardships they endure and survive. Each color a thread of meaning. Each combination a careful sentence. Nothing is chosen by accident. Every piece is composed, like a poem. And the patterns matter as much as the colors. The way the bands are ordered, the shapes that repeat. These too carry meaning, marking the wearer's clan, their age group, the stage of life they have reached. The body becomes a page, and the beads, the writing. So when two Maasai meet, before a single word is spoken, they have already read one another. A glance tells them who is a child and who is a warrior, who is unmarried and who is a wife, who is poor and who is blessed with cattle and standing. Look at a young, unmarried girl, and you will see it. Her beadwork is bright and abundant, layered around her neck, announcing that she is of age, beautiful, and ready to be courted. It is her invitation and her pride, worn in the open for all to see. Then look at a married woman, and the story changes. She wears the long necklaces that mark her new life, and on her wedding day, a special collar of breathtaking work, made over many days, that crowns her as a bride. Her beads now tell of a household and a place secured. Most striking of all is the great flat disc that rests upon the shoulders, a wide wheel of beadwork circling the neck. When a woman dances, this collar rises and falls, bouncing in time with her movement, flashing its colors with every step. The dance becomes visible. The beadwork becomes music. These pieces are not bought in a day. The finest can take weeks of patient work, thousands of tiny beads threaded one by one. A bride's adornment is a labor of love from the women of her family, hours and days of devotion strung into something she will wear on the greatest day of her life. Look, too, at the ears. From childhood, the lobes are gently stretched and adorned, growing into wide loops that hold heavy ornaments of beads and metal. To the Maasai eye, these long, decorated lobes are a mark of beauty and of a life fully lived. Beadwork is also a gift of the heart. A young woman may bead an ornament for the warrior she favors, a quiet message passed from her hands to his. He wears it with pride, a sign that he is wanted. In a culture with few private words, the beads can say what the mouth cannot. And it does not belong to the women alone, even if they make it. The warriors wear it too, heavy with beaded bands across the chest, bright collars and armlets that flash as they leap and dance. On a man, the beadwork shouts of strength and beauty and readiness for love and for battle. A warrior at the height of his glory is a wall of color, red ochre shining in his braided hair, beaded bands crossing his chest, bright rings stacked on his arms and ankles. He does not dress to blend in. He dresses to be seen and remembered. In the great ceremonies, the beadwork reaches its full glory. Whole families dressed in their finest, every color blazing in the sun, the discs and strands swaying as the people sing and stamp and jump. It is one of the most spectacular sights on earth, and every piece of it means something. In our world, we might write a life story in a book, or a photo album, or a string of glowing screens, which are often fictional stories. The Maasai woman writes hers in beads. Her age, her marriage, her children, her losses and her triumphs, all of it recorded in color around her own neck. And in recent years, this ancient art has become something more. As the modern world presses in, the beadwork of the Maasai women has found buyers far beyond the Savanna. Travelers carry it home. It sells in distant cities. It has become a source of income and of independence. Women who once beaded only for their families now bead for the world. The skill passed down for generations is, today, helping to keep families fed and children in school. The old language of color has found a new and unexpected power. It has become a livelihood. But whether it adorns a bride on the plains or a stranger in a faraway city, the meaning at its root never changes. Each bead is a piece of identity. Each color, a value held dear. The Maasai woman does not simply make jewelry. She makes memory visible. So this is the world the women build. The earthen walls that shelter the family. The beaded language that holds its memory. The fire, the milk, the stories in the dark. A whole civilization, raised and kept by their hands. But a boy cannot stay a boy forever, safe inside this circle of women and walls. One day, the spear will call him. One day, he must walk out through the thorns and into the wild, to face the knife, the lion, and the long, hard road that turns a child into a warrior. Watch him go. The boy who once minded goats and dreamed by the fire steps out through the thorn gate into a world that will test him to his very edge. He is about to begin the longest, hardest journey a Maasai will ever make, the journey into manhood. Among the Maasai, you do not simply grow up, You are made, and you are never made alone. A boy passes through life not by himself, but with a whole band of others born in the same season. Together they will rise. Together they will be tested. They call this band an age set. Every so often, once in perhaps 10 or 15 years, the elders open a new one, and all the boys of the right age are gathered into it. From that day on, these boys are brothers, bound together for the rest of their lives. Think of it as the strongest bond you can imagine. Closer than friends, almost closer than family. They will be initiated together, become warriors together, marry, and grow old together, moving through every stage of life as one. An age set is a brotherhood that death alone can break. The first great step is a ceremony called Enkai. It marks the moment a group of boys is chosen to begin the road to warriorhood, and it does not begin in comfort. It begins in the wild. The boys leave their homes behind. For days and nights, they live out in the bush, sleeping under the open sky, far from their mothers and the safety of the boma. They walk. They endure. They learn to read the land and to fear nothing in it. They eat what they can find. They harden their feet on rough ground and their nerves on long, dark nights. Slowly, the softness of childhood is burned away, and in its place grows something tougher: patience, watchfulness, the first quiet steel of a warrior. It is a test of discipline and endurance, and it is meant to be hard. Out there, the elders begin to teach them, not from books, but through songs and riddles and old stories, how to handle cattle, how to settle a quarrel, how to carry themselves as men. By the end of it, something has shifted. The boys who return are no longer simply children. They have been marked as ready. Ready for the single most important and most feared moment of a young Maasai man's life. The knife. Among the Maasai, the true gateway to manhood is circumcision, and it is performed in a way that may be hard for outsiders to imagine. With no medicine to dull the pain, in the cold light just before dawn, by the hand of a respected elder. For the days leading up to it, the boy must prove himself. He herds the cattle alone. He shows he can carry a heavy spear and move through the dark night without fear. He is preparing not just his body, but his mind, for the trial to come. On the morning itself, his head is shaved. His face may be painted with white chalk. He is led out into the cold dawn air, and around him gather the men and the warriors, watching. Always watching. For everything now depends on one thing. He must not flinch. He must not cry out. He must not move, or make a sound, or show even a flicker of fear. Through the entire ordeal, he must remain perfectly still and silent, his face like stone. This is the test. Because to the Maasai, this is not really about the body at all. It is about courage. A boy who endures in silence proves to the whole community that he can master pain, master fear, and be trusted to stand firm when the lions come, or the raiders, or the drought. And the stakes could not be higher. A boy who cries out, who flinches, who shows fear, brings shame upon himself and upon his family that can follow him for years. But the one who holds steady is celebrated as a hero, his bravery sung and remembered. Imagine the weight of that. A child of perhaps 15 years, kneeling in the cold dawn, the eyes of his whole world upon him, knowing that in the next few minutes he will become either a man or a disappointment, and choosing, with everything in him, to be a man. There is no rushing it, and no second chance. The cut is made slowly, deliberately, in full view, and the boy stares straight ahead, breathing steady, every muscle locked against the urge to move. When it is over, the men erupt. He has passed. When it is done, and he has held firm, the celebration begins. He has crossed over. He is no longer a boy. As he heals, he is cared for, fed the best food, dressed in dark cloth. his body recovering as his new life begins to take shape. And then, at last, he becomes what every Maasai boy dreams of becoming: a Moran, a warrior. He joins the ranks of the young men who are the shield of the entire tribe, and his appearance changes to match his new glory. Now he lets his hair grow long. He spends hours braiding it, coloring it red with ochre, until it falls in shining strands down his back. He carries his spear everywhere. He paints and beads his body. The warrior wants to be seen, admired, and a little feared. The young warriors often leave the family boma to live together in a place of their own, a warrior village built for them by their mothers. Here, the brothers of an age set eat, sleep, train, and roam as one, far from the rule of the elders. There is no thorn wall around this warrior village. They do not need one. The warriors themselves are the wall. Any danger that comes for the cattle must first come through them, and they will meet it without hesitation. These are the wild, free years of a Maasai man's life. Years of strength and pride and adventure. The warriors guard the cattle and the homesteads. They patrol the land against raiders and predators. And they are the heroes of every young woman's eye. Watch them move across the plain and you understand. They run for miles without tiring. They can go a day on little food and less sleep. Their bodies are lean and hard from a life lived almost entirely outdoors, under the sun and the stars. They follow a strict code. There are foods a warrior may not eat, and rules a warrior must keep. A Moran is expected to be brave, generous, disciplined, and tireless. He is the living proof that the Maasai can defend everything they hold dear. And the young women watch them closely. A brave, well-known warrior, his hair gleaming with ochre, his body strong, is the heart's desire of every girl in the district. Courtship and warriorhood are woven tightly together. To be a great Moran is to be wanted. But even this glory cannot last forever. The age set that rose together must, in time, move on together. And so there comes another great ceremony, one of the most powerful in all of Maasai life. It is called Unoto. Unoto is the ceremony that ends the warrior years. It gathers a whole age set of Morans after roughly a decade of warriorhood to make the great passage from young warrior into adulthood, into the first rank of the elders. And at its heart is a single emotional act: the shaving of the hair. That long, red, beautiful hair, grown and tended for years, the very crown of his warriorhood, is shaved away. And the one who shaves it is his own mother. Gently, she takes the symbol of his wild young manhood and removes it, releasing him into his next life. For many warriors, it is a moment of real grief. They are letting go of the freest years they will ever know. But it is also a moment of pride. They are stepping up to carry heavier responsibilities, to marry, to lead, to guide those who come after them. This is how the Maasai have organized their world for centuries, not by age and years, but by these great shared passages. From boy to warrior to elder, each step taken together, each one earned, each one marked by ceremony and witnessed by all. And the world has taken notice. These rites of passage, the making of the Maasai warrior, have been recognized by the United Nations as a living treasure of human culture, a heritage worth protecting for all of humankind. But becoming a warrior was never only about ceremony. A Moran had to prove his courage in the world, against the most dangerous test the Savanna could offer. A test with teeth and claws and a roar that could freeze the blood. The lion. For as long as anyone can remember, the lion and the Maasai have shared this land. Two great powers of the Savanna, locked together in respect and rivalry. And for a young warrior, the lion was the ultimate measure of his courage. In the old days, to hunt and face a lion was one of the highest things a Moran could do. It was called, in their language, olamayo. And it was not a thing taken lightly. It was a test of everything a warrior was meant to be. Sometimes the hunt began with a crime. A lion would slip into the night and take a cow or a calf from the herd. To the Maasai, this was not just a loss. It was a challenge, an attack on the very heart of their wealth and their honor. When that happened, a cry would go up. The warriors had a special call, a war cry, that could carry across the plains. In the old days, it was blown on a great curved horn, or relayed from mouth to mouth, summoning the brothers of the age set to gather. And they would come, spears in hand, moving as one body across the grass to track the killer down. For this was a duty as much as a thrill. A warrior who let a predator threaten the herd was no warrior at all. But the lion hunt was more than revenge for a stolen cow. It was the stage on which a young man could become a legend. To stand before a charging lion, with nothing but a spear and your own nerve, and not run, was the truest proof of bravery there was. The hunt was rarely the work of one man alone. The warriors moved as a team, surrounding the great cat, each one risking his life. And the greatest honor went to the bravest, the one who stood his ground first, who struck first, who seized the lion even as it fought for its life. It was breathtakingly dangerous. A cornered lion is one of the most powerful animals on earth, all muscle and claw and fury. Warriors were injured. Warriors were killed. Everyone who went out knew that some might not come back. That was the point. The risk was the meaning. There were rules even to the danger. A warrior who attacked a lion that was old or sick or a lioness with cubs won no honor. The hunt had a code. It was meant to be a fair test of one strong man against one strong beast. Pause your video here and comment what will be done next to make this story more interesting. A young man who succeeded came home transformed. His courage was sung in stories. He earned the admiration of the elders, the respect of his brothers, and the eyes of every young woman in the district. A lion killer was a man among men. For generations, this was simply the way of things. The lion tested the warrior answered, and the balance between them, fierce as it was, held steady across the long centuries on the plains. But in our own lifetime, that ancient balance broke. And it broke not because of the Maasai, but because of the wider world closing in around them, and around the lions both. Across Africa, the lions began to vanish. Their wild land was carved up for farms and fences and cities. Their prey grew scarce. In Kenya alone, the number of lions crashed from around 30,000 just a few decades ago to barely 2,000 today. 2,000, where once there were 30,000. The king of the Savanna was sliding toward the edge of extinction, and the old warrior's test, the hunting of lions, however brave, was now helping to push a vanishing animal closer to disappearing forever. The Maasai faced a hard and painful choice. Here was a tradition at the very core of what it meant to be a warrior, a practice thousands of years old. And here was the truth that, if it continued, there might soon be no lions left at all. What happened next is one of the most remarkable turns in this whole story. The Maasai did not cling blindly to the past. The elders, the warriors, the community leaders looked at the vanishing lions, and they chose to change. Lion hunting was largely set aside, and across much of the land it became forbidden by law. But the Maasai did something far greater than simply stopping. They turned around completely. The people who had once hunted lions became the people who protect them. Today, across the plains, former lion hunters work as lion guardians. They use the very same skills, the tracking, the knowledge of the land, the fearlessness that once helped them kill, to instead watch over the prides and keep them safe. They monitor the lions. They warn herders when the big cats are near, so cattle can be moved before there is conflict. They calm the anger when a cow is lost, finding ways to keep both the herds and the lions alive. The warrior has become the protector of his old rival. Programs with names like Lion Guardians and the Big Life Foundation have grown up hand in hand with the Maasai, turning ancient enemies into allies. And slowly, in some places, the lions are beginning to recover. The warrior's courage now serves the lion's survival. It takes a different kind of bravery, perhaps. The patience to protect a creature your grandfathers were taught to kill. But the Maasai have always understood balance, and they could see that a savanna without lions would no longer be the savanna at all. But if a warrior no longer proves himself against a lion, how does he prove himself at all? The Maasai found an answer to that too, and it is one of the most joyful things you will ever see. They turned their warrior skills into sport. A little over a decade ago, the community created a competition all their own. They called it the Maasai Olympics, and instead of hunting lions for glory, the young men now compete against one another for it. They throw the spear for distance. They hurl the warrior's wooden club, the weapon of the hunt, at a target. They race across the plains at astonishing speed. Everything a warrior once needed in the wild turned into a contest of pure skill and strength. The games were championed by one of the Maasai's own, a man named David Rudisha, who carried the blood of warriors and the speed of a champion, and who became an Olympic gold medalist and a world record holder, running for the whole world to see. Under his banner, the message to the young warriors is clear. You do not need to kill a lion to be a hero. Run faster, jump higher, throw farther than any man before you. Win glory without spilling the blood of a vanishing animal. Be a warrior and a guardian, both. And the greatest event of all needs no spear and no target. It is the one thing the Maasai have always done to show their strength. They jump, straight up, into the sky. It is a movement so famous it has become the very image of these people. They call it the adumu. Picture it. The warriors form a tight circle, shoulder to shoulder, and begin to sing, a deep, rhythmic chant that rises and falls like a heartbeat. One by one, a warrior steps into the center, and then, without bending forward, he leaps. Straight up he goes, body tall and proud, heels never touching the earth for long, springing higher and higher as his brothers sing him on. The higher he jumps, the greater his strength, his stamina, his standing. It is breathtaking, and it is beautiful. There are no shoes, no springboard, no trick to it. Just bare feet, strong legs, and years of a life spent walking and running across the open plains. The adamu cannot be faked. It is the body of the warrior, laid bare for all to judge. For a young warrior, the adamu is everything at once, a display of power, a celebration of brotherhood, and, with the young women watching from the side, an unmistakable announcement. Look how high I can rise. Look how strong I am. Look at me. And now this same leap has become the crowning event of the Maasai Olympics. Where once a young man proved his worth by facing a lion, today he proves it by springing toward the sky, before a cheering crowd, with not a single animal harmed. It is a perfect picture of who the Maasai are. A people who can hold tight to the heart of a tradition, while letting go of the part of it the world can no longer bear. They kept the courage. They kept the leap. They simply spared the lion. And yet, for all the glory of the warrior, for all his courage and his leaping and his songs, there is something he was made to protect that matters more than any lion, more than any contest, more even than his own life. It walks slowly on 4 legs. It gives milk and blood and meaning. It is the reason the Maasai exist, the gift of God himself, the very center of their world. To understand the Maasai at all, you must finally understand the cattle. To the Maasai, a cow is not a possession. A cow is a relationship. It is wealth and food and family and faith, all wrapped in one warm, breathing animal. Take away the cattle, and you do not just make a Maasai poor, you unmake him entirely. Remember the old story. In the beginning, God sent the cattle down from the sky and gave them to the Maasai to keep. So every cow is more than livestock. It is a gift from Enkai himself, a living thread tying the people to their God. And so a Maasai measures his life in cattle. Not in money, not in land, not in the things the outside world counts. A man's wealth, his standing, his very worth in the eyes of his neighbors, is written in the size and health of his herd. A man with a great herd is a man of influence. His word carries weight in the councils of the elders. He can support many wives and many children. He can help a neighbor through a hard season. Cattle are not just wealth. Cattle are power and generosity and respect. Ask a Maasai herder how many cattle he owns, and you may not get a straight answer. To count your cattle out loud can be seen as tempting misfortune. But he knows. He knows every single one. Their faces, their markings, their tempers, their names. Frankly, most of us would see a herd. He sees individuals. This is something hard for the modern world to grasp. A herd is not a faceless mass of animals. To the herder, each cow is an individual, as familiar to him as the members of his own family. He has known many of them since the hour they were born. He will speak to them softly as he moves among them. He will mourn a good cow that dies almost as he would a friend. Of course, that seems unusual to us. To a Maasai herder, it is perfectly natural. This bond between the herder and the herd is one of the oldest and tenderest relationships our species has ever formed. From boyhood, this knowledge is drilled into him. Out on the plains for long days, the herding boy learns to recognize each animal at a glance, to notice the moment one is sick or troubled, to guide them to the best grass and the safest water. And the cattle give back everything. First and above all, they give milk. Fresh milk is the foundation of the Maasai diet, drunk daily, the food that has nourished children on these plains for countless generations. The milk is drawn into long, smoothed gourds, sometimes cleaned and flavored with a little ash or smoke from special woods. It can be drunk fresh or left to sour into a thick, tangy curd that the Maasai prize. Simple food, but food that has sustained a nation. But there is another gift, one that surprises outsiders. On certain occasions, the Maasai also drink the blood of their cattle. Not by killing the animal, but by drawing a small amount from a vein, carefully so the cow is unharmed and walks away to graze again. The blood is mixed with milk into a rich, strengthening drink, given to the sick, to new mothers, to warriors, to those who need their strength restored. It is medicine and meal in one, and it is taken with respect, the animal honored, never wasted. Meat is eaten more rarely, mostly at ceremonies and special times. For the Maasai do not raise cattle simply to slaughter them. A living cow gives milk season after season and calves year after year. A dead cow gives only one meal. The herd is worth far more alive. And almost nothing is wasted. The hides become bedding, sandals, and clothing. The dung builds and seals the houses and fuels the fires. Even the horns and bones find their use. From a single animal, an entire way of life is supplied. There is a deep practicality in all of this. In a hard, dry land where little grows, the cattle turn the grass that humans cannot eat into milk and blood that they can. The cow is the engine that converts the savanna itself into human life. Because of all this, cattle sit at the very center of every important moment in Maasai life. And nowhere is this clearer than in marriage. For among the Maasai, you do not simply fall in love and wed. A marriage is sealed in cattle. When a young man wishes to marry, his family offers cattle to the family of the bride. This is not the buying of a person, as outsiders sometimes wrongly imagine. It is a deep and ancient exchange, binding two families together and honoring the value of the woman who joins a new home. Let me be clear. To the Maasai, it is not about ownership. It is about obligation and connection. The number of cattle, the care taken in the giving, all of it carries meaning. It says, this union matters. It says, we are serious, and we are joined now, family to family. The herd becomes the bridge between two clans, the foundation of a new household, and the giving is not rushed. The negotiations between the families can take time, and great care, with elders speaking on both sides. When at last the cattle change hands and the marriage is sealed, two families have become, in a real sense, one. Cattle mark the joyful moments, and the sacred ones too. At the greatest ceremonies, an animal is offered in sacrifice. Its blood, shed with prayer, brings the whole community together and carries the people's hopes upward to Enkai. For the red of that blood, you will remember, is the color of unity, of life, of the bond between the people and their God. To share in the sacrifice is to be one people, gathered as one, under one sky. Even the way the Maasai greet one another reveals it. In the warmth of a meeting, they will ask after each other's cattle, hoping the herds are well and at peace. To wish a man healthy cattle is to wish him a healthy life, for the two cannot be separated. There is even a saying among them that the man who has cattle has everything, and the man who has lost them has lost himself. To be Maasai is, in the deepest way, to be a keeper of cattle. The two ideas cannot be pulled apart. So when you see a Maasai standing among his cattle at dusk, counting them home, do not see a simple farmer with his stock. See a man among the gift of his God. See wealth and family and faith gathered around him in the failing light. But this great love of cattle raises a question. A people so devoted to their herds, grazing them across these plains for 1,000 years, you might expect them to have stripped the land bare and driven the wild things away. The truth is the very opposite. For wherever the Maasai have grazed their cattle, the wild animals have flourished alongside them. The same plains that carry Maasai herds carry some of the greatest gatherings of wildlife left on Earth. Lions, elephants, zebra, and the thundering millions of the Great Migration. How can this be? How can a people and their cattle share the land with so much wildlife, when elsewhere in the world, farming and herding have pushed the wild things to the very edge? The answer lies in how the Maasai have always lived. First, and most simply, the Maasai traditionally did not hunt the wild animals for food. Their food was their cattle. The antelope, the zebra, the wildebeest grazing all around them were, for the most part, simply left in peace. There was no reason to harm them. In the Maasai world, to eat the meat of wild game was looked down upon, even forbidden. A true Maasai lived on his herds, not on hunting. And so, for century after century, the wild herds grazed unmolested beside the cattle, growing into the vast multitudes we marvel at today. Picture that. Across the same horizon, Maasai cattle and wild zebra side by side. Warriors walking past grazing gazelle that barely lift their heads. A people and a wilderness, sharing one table, neither destroying the other. It is a kind of harmony the modern world has almost forgotten. Travelers who first came to these plains could scarcely believe it. Here were herders living in the midst of lions and elephants, and yet the game was tamer, more plentiful, than in lands where no people lived at all. The Maasai presence did not empty the savanna. It seemed to fill it. But it goes deeper than simply not hunting. The very way the Maasai move their cattle has helped to keep these grasslands alive and healthy. And in this, they are far wiser ecologists than they have ever been given credit for. The Maasai do not keep their cattle penned in one place, eating the same patch of ground to dust. They move. With the seasons, with the rains, they drive their herds from pasture to pasture, never staying too long, always letting the grazed land rest and recover behind them. This is exactly how the great wild herds move too. The wildebeest and zebra sweep across the plains in their endless migration, grazing an area, then moving on, giving the grass time to grow back. The Maasai herds follow the same ancient rhythm. And that rhythm is the secret to a living grassland. When grazing animals move through and then move on, the grass is cropped, then allowed to regrow stronger. The soil is not exhausted. The land is not trampled to ruin. It is, instead, kept in balance. The cattle even help the land in ways you might not expect. Their dung returns precious nutrients to the soil, feeding the grass. Their grazing keeps the bush from swallowing the open plains. Without grazing animals, these grasslands would slowly choke with thorn scrub, and much of the wildlife would lose its home. So the Maasai and their cattle are not invaders in this ecosystem. They are part of it. A thread woven into the web of the savanna, as much as the lion or the elephant or the migrating herd. Remove them, and something in the balance would break. This is one of the great hidden truths of these famous landscapes. Some of the most celebrated wildlife regions on Earth, the places that fill our screens and our dreams of wild Africa, are wild today, in part because the Maasai kept them that way. The great reserve that bears their very name, the Masai Mara, was their grazing land. The endless plains of the Serengeti, whose name comes from a Maasai word for the land that runs on forever, were Maasai country. They roamed these places, and the wildlife thrived. Think of what that means. The image of wild Africa that the whole world holds in its heart, the great cats, the elephant herds, the migration darkening the plains, took its present shape on land shaped by Maasai feet and Maasai cattle. Their footprints are written into the wild itself, and here lies a deep and painful irony. When the wider world decided these lands were too precious and beautiful to lose, and set them aside as parks and reserves, it was often the Maasai who were pushed out, away from the very lands their way of life had helped to protect. They lost grazing grounds their ancestors had used for generations. The mobile, seasonal life that kept the balance was squeezed into smaller and smaller spaces. It was a hard lesson, that those who had lived most gently on the land were not always thanked for it. But the story is still being written, and in recent years, a wiser path has begun to open. More and more, the world has come to understand what the Maasai always knew, that people and wildlife can share the land, that conservation works best with the Maasai, not against them. Across Kenya and Tanzania, Maasai communities now run conservancies, setting aside land where wildlife can roam, and welcoming visitors who come from across the world to witness it. The income helps support families, schools, and clinics. The wildlife brings a living instead of taking one away. It is not a perfect arrangement, and it is not without its struggles. But at its best, it points to a future in which the ancient Maasai gift, the gift of living alongside the wild, becomes more valuable than ever. A gift the whole earth now needs to learn. Scientists and conservationists who once saw the herders as a problem now study them as teachers. The patient, moving, light-footed way of grazing that the Maasai perfected over centuries is, it turns out, one of the healthiest ways to use a grassland that anyone has ever found. Yet even this hard-won balance hangs by a thread. The land is being divided and fenced as never before. The old freedom to move the herds with the reins is shrinking, and the reins themselves have grown cruel and unpredictable as the climate shifts beneath their feet. Drought now strikes harder and longer than the elders ever remember. Herds that took a lifetime to build can wither in a single failed season. The Maasai, who have weathered so much, face perhaps their greatest test yet, in a world warming and closing in around them. And in times like these, when the rains fail and the future grows dark, the Maasai have always turned to a special kind of person, one who can read the will of the sky, one who walks between the world of people and the world of God. He is healer and prophet, seer and guide. He carries the deepest secrets of the Maasai soul. And to meet him is to step into the most hidden chamber of this ancient culture, the world of the spirit, the wisdom that cannot be seen. Every people has its bridge between earth and heaven, a figure who stands at the edge of the seen world and listens to the unseen. Among the Maasai, that figure has a name, the Oloiboni, and he is unlike anyone else in their world. He is not a king. He does not command armies or own the most cattle or rule by force. His power is of a stranger and deeper kind. The Oloiboni is the seer, the healer, the prophet, the one who speaks with Enkai and carries the answers back. In a culture with no written scripture, no temples, no priests in robes, The Oloiboni holds the spiritual thread of the entire people in his hands. When the community faces a great question, it is to him they turn, and his word can shape the fate of thousands. Picture him. An elder, his face deeply lined by years and visions. Around him hangs an air of quiet authority that even the bravest warriors treat with care. For they believe he can see what others cannot, the shape of things to come. His gifts are said to pass down through the blood, from father to son, across the generations. A line of seers, each inheriting the sacred knowledge, the secret ways of reading the will of God. To be born into this line is to be born to a heavy and holy calling. And how does he see? The Oloiboni has his sacred tools. Chief among them is a special gourd, worn smooth with handling, filled with small stones and pebbles and pieces of bone, gathered over a lifetime. When someone comes to him with a trouble, a sickness, a question, a fear, he takes up the gourd. He shakes it, murmurs his prayers, and casts the stones out onto a hide before him. And then he reads them, the way they fall, the patterns they make. To the untrained eye, it is a scatter of pebbles on a skin. To the Oloiboni, it is a message. And listen, it is not what you are thinking about. In those patterns, he sees illness or health, danger or safety, the right path and the wrong one. He reads the stones the way we might read a page, and the people believe. A warrior would not set out on a long or dangerous journey without the Oloiboni's blessing. A community would not hold a great ceremony without his guidance. In the most important moments of life, his voice carries the weight of God's own. He blesses, and he can also warn. A whispered word from the Oloiboni that a venture is ill-fated can stop a war party in its tracks. His authority rests not on the spear, but on something the Maasai fear far more, the displeasure of God. But the Oloiboni is more than a reader of stones. He is also a healer of bodies. And here we touch one of the great treasuries of Maasai knowledge, built up over countless generations on these plains, the deep wisdom of plants. The Maasai are walking encyclopedias of the living land around them. They know the trees, the roots, the barks, the leaves, not as scenery, but as medicine. Knowledge passed down by word of mouth, tested over centuries, carried in living memory. When a fever strikes, there is a plant for it. When a stomach turns, a wound festers, a chest grows tight, the Maasai healer knows which bark to boil, which root to crush, which leaf to brew. Their pharmacy is the Savanna itself. Take one of their most prized trees, an acacia whose bitter bark the warriors boil into a strong, dark soup. They drink it to build strength and stamina, to drive away tiredness, to harden the body for the demands of the warrior life. The warriors even have a tradition of retreating into the bush, away from the homesteads, to feast on meat thickened with these powerful barks and herbs. They return strengthened, renewed, their bodies charged for whatever lies ahead. Food and medicine, once again, are one. And it is not only the healers and the seers who carry this knowledge. Mothers know the remedies for their children. Herders know which plants to chew on a long, hot day. The wisdom of the land is woven through the whole people, an inheritance shared by all. Modern science is only beginning to catch up to what these communities have long understood. Researchers who study the Maasai plants find, again and again, real medicine hidden inside them. The old knowledge, dismissed by some as superstition, turns out to hold hard truth. And honestly, the plants were always there. The knowledge was too. There is humility in this, for all of us. A people with no laboratories and no textbooks built, through patience and observation alone, a healing knowledge that took the modern world centuries of study to begin to confirm. Wisdom, it turns out, wears many faces. But of all the Oloiboni who ever lived, one name rises above the rest. A seer so great that his memory still echoes across the plains more than 100 years after his death. His name was Mbatian. Mbatian was the most powerful Oloiboni the Maasai had ever known. In the second half of the 1800s, his influence spread across the whole of their vast territory, from the lakes of Kenya down toward the mountains of Tanzania. Under his guidance, the Maasai reached the height of their power and unity. He was no mere fortune-teller. He was the spiritual heart of a nation at its peak, advising the elders, blessing the warriors, holding the scattered Maasai sections together as one people. But Mbatian is remembered most for a darker gift, for it is said that he saw the future coming, and that what he saw filled him with dread. He warned his people of disasters they could not yet imagine in the years before they arrived. He is said to have foreseen the coming of strangers from across the sea, pale men with powerful weapons who would take the land. He spoke of a great iron snake that would crawl across the plains, what we would call the railway, cutting through the heart of Maasai country. And he warned of sickness, plagues that would strike the cattle and the people both, emptying the herds and the homesteads. To his listeners, these must have sounded like the ravings of a dream. And then, in the years that followed, they began to come true. The cattle plague swept through, just as he had warned. The strangers came, with their weapons and their borders and their iron snake. The disasters Mbatian had foreseen fell upon the Maasai one after another, and his people understood too late the weight of what their great seer had told them. But unfortunately, some warnings are only understood when it's too late. When Mbatian died, the Maasai had lost more than a man. They had lost a voice that reached all the way to God, but the source of that voice, the dwelling place of Enkai himself, still stood, as it had always stood, on the far horizon. A mountain, burning from within. Rise high over the Rift Valley, near the border of Kenya and Tanzania, and you will see it. A near-perfect cone, standing alone above the plains, its summit often wreathed in cloud. The Maasai call it Oldoinyo Lengai. In their language, the name means the mountain of God, and to them, that is no poetry. It is the simple truth. For the Maasai believe that this mountain is the dwelling place of Enkai himself. When God withdrew from the earth, long ago, it was here, they say, that he made his home. There is an old story. They say that Enkai once lived closer to people, until a hunter, foolish and bold, loosed an arrow that struck the god. Wounded and angered, Enkai drew back from humankind and retreated to the high burning heart of this mountain to dwell apart. And this is no ordinary mountain. Oldoinyo Lengai is a volcano, and one of the strangest on the entire planet. For it is the only volcano in the world that burns with a rare, cool black lava. Unlike the fierce orange fire of any other mountain on Earth, its lava flows out dark, almost like wet, living mud, far cooler than ordinary molten rock. And as it meets the air and weathers, it pales, turning a ghostly white, so that the slopes of the mountain shimmer with strange, bright streaks. It is a place that seems to belong to another world. Scientists travel from across the world to study this single mountain, drawn by lava found nowhere else. But long before any scientist arrived with instruments and questions, the Maasai already knew what it was. Sometimes a place becomes sacred long before anyone can explain it. For a people who see God in a black storm cloud and wrath in a red sky, a mountain that burns with black fire is not a curiosity. It is a wonder, a sign. Proof, made of stone and flame, that this is indeed the throne of the living God, and the mountain speaks. From time to time, Oldoinyo Lengai stirs and erupts, sending ash high into the sky, raining it down on the plains for miles around. To the geologist, this is the earth releasing its pressure. To the Maasai, it is the voice and mood of Enkai. When the mountain is calm, God is at peace. When it rumbles and smokes and throws its ash across the land, then Enkai is troubled or angry, and his people take note. The mountain is a face turned toward them, and they have learned, across the centuries, to read it. And after living beside it for generation after generation, they trust what it tells them. And so, in times of great need, the Maasai come to the mountain. When the rains have failed and the cattle are dying, when sickness will not lift, when a family longs for a child and none will come, they make the long journey to the foot of the mountain of God. They do not come empty-handed. They bring an offering, often a young, unblemished sheep, pure and without fault. They climb toward the holy slopes. They abstain from food. And they raise their voices to God, singing and praying for mercy, for rain, for life. It is said that those who come with pure hearts feel the presence of Enkai upon the mountain, that they sense him near, hear him in the silence, and come away with their burdens lifted and their prayers carried upward. And it is said that the wicked do not dare to climb at all. Maybe, just maybe, that's part of the journey. Not just asking for help, but finding a little space to think. For the Maasai believe that one who comes to the mountain with evil in his heart, with witchcraft or cruelty, will be struck down by the wrath of God. And so the cruel and the false stay away, too afraid to set foot on the holy ground. The mountain guards itself. Those who do climb face a hard and humbling ascent. The mountain is steep, its slopes loose and treacherous. Many begin the climb in the cool and dark of night, struggling upward through the hours, so as to reach the high summit just as the sun breaks over the Rift Valley. Imagine standing there, in that first light. The whole valley spread out far below, golden and immense. Behind you, the strange pale crater of the mountain. And all around, a silence so deep it feels like the breath of God. For the pilgrim, there is no holier place on earth. Many who make the pilgrimage say they descend changed, that something was answered, or healed, or set right within them on those slopes. Whether it is God, or the mountain, or the journey itself, the burden feels lighter on the way down than it did on the way up. Below the mountain stretches another wonder, a great soda lake, its waters caustic and still, glowing pink and white under the harsh sun. Lake Natron, a place so harsh that little can live in it, ringed by the bones of the land beneath the watching mountain. The whole region feels set apart. And there is a beautiful symmetry in it all. The god with two faces, black and red, dwelling in a mountain that burns with black fire beneath a sky that turns red. The duality the Maasai see in everything, written into the very landscape of their holiest place. This is the heart of Maasai faith, and it tells us something important about these people. They built no great cathedrals. They carved no idols. They wrote no holy books. Their religion needs none of these things. Because for the Maasai, the whole world is the temple. God is not shut inside a building to be visited on certain days. God is in the storm cloud and the dry wind, in the cattle and the grass, in the burning mountain and the endless sky. The sacred is everywhere. To live as a Maasai is to live inside a holy world every single day, to greet the rain as a blessing, to treat the cattle as a gift, to read the sky for the mood of God. It is a way of seeing that much of the modern world has lost and may not even remember it ever had. There is a kind of wealth in that, harder to measure than cattle, but just as real. The wealth of belonging, of knowing your place in the great web of land and sky and spirit, of never, for a single moment, feeling that you walk through the world alone. And yet the world the Maasai walk through is changing faster now than in all the centuries before. A new kind of power has come to the plains. It does not live in a mountain or fall from the sky. It glows in the hand. It hums in the pocket. The same warrior who reads the clouds for the mood of God now glances at a glowing screen for the price of cattle and the chance of rain. Two worlds, the ancient and the modern, meeting in a single pair of hands. And how the Maasai hold them both is the final chapter of our story. Across the Great Plains of Kenya and Tanzania, a quiet revolution is unfolding. It does not arrive with armies or with thunder. It arrives in a small, glowing rectangle of glass, carried in the folds of a red shuka. The mobile phone has come to the Maasai. And the Maasai, true to everything they are, have not been swept away by it. They have simply put it to work. Out on the plains, a herder pulls a phone from beneath his cloak and checks the coming weather, deciding where to lead his cattle for water and grass. He checks the price of cattle at distant markets so that no trader can cheat him. He sends money across the country with a few taps, paying a school fee, helping a relative, all without ever touching a coin. In a land of few banks, the phone has become a wallet, a market, and a messenger. It's amazing how quickly a useful tool becomes part of our daily life. Remember the old war cry, the call that once summoned warriors across the plains, blown on a curved horn or carried mouth to mouth? Today, when a lion threatens the herd, that same alarm can travel in an instant by a single phone call, gathering the warriors faster than any horn ever could. On the roof of an earthen house built the ancient way, by a woman's hands, from mud and dung and grass, you may now see a small solar panel, drinking in the African sun, charging the phones by night. The oldest and the newest, resting side by side. The children, too, are walking between worlds. More and more of them now go to school, learning to read and write, learning the languages of the wider world. Some will leave for the cities to study, to work, to build new kinds of lives far from the plains. And this is the great question that hangs over the Maasai today. As the young ones learn new ways, as the land is fenced and divided, as the droughts grow harsher and the cities call, how much of the old world can survive? What will be carried forward, and what will be lost? It is not an easy question, and the Maasai do not pretend it is. They feel the pull of the modern world as keenly as anyone. The temptation of an easier life. The slow fading of the old knowledge as fewer young people learn the ways of the cattle and the seasons and the stars. And yet, walk among them today, and you will see something remarkable. The warrior who checks his phone still wears his red shuka. He still carries his spear. He still knows every cow by name, still leaps toward the sky in the ancient dance, still bows his head for the blessing of the elders. He has not traded his world for ours. He has chosen instead to hold both, to take what is useful from the new, without letting go of what is sacred in the old. It is, perhaps, the hardest balance any people can strike, and the Maasai are striking it, day by day. So what can we learn? We who live in the glowing, restless world the Maasai are only now beginning to touch. Perhaps it is worth asking what we ourselves have traded away on our long road to where we are. We gained so much. Comfort, and medicine, and machines that do our labor. But somewhere along the way, many of us lost something the Maasai have held onto with both hands. We lost the feeling of belonging to a place, of knowing the land beneath our feet as a living thing. We lost the closeness of a community that truly needs us, where every person has a place, and no one grows old alone. We lost the patience of a slower life, lived by the rhythm of the rains and the herds, rather than the buzzing of a screen. We lost, many of us, the sense that the world is sacred, that the sky and the earth and the creatures are not simply resources to be used, but gifts to be honored. The Maasai never lost that. To them, the world is still alive, still holy, still watched over by God. They are not a people frozen in the past, as some imagine. They are a living, changing, breathing nation, walking forward into the future on their own terms, carrying their cattle, their color, their courage, and their faith into a world that desperately needs to remember such things are possible. And so, as the sun sinks once more over the great Rift Valley, the cattle come home, the bells ring soft across the grass, and a herding boy watches the red horizon, dreaming of the warrior he will one day become. The promise that God made long ago is still being kept. The Maasai endure, guardians of the great rift, keepers of an older, deeper way of being human. And as long as the cattle graze and the red shuka glows against the gold of the plains, their story, the story of a people who refuse to disappear, goes on, and on, and on.